Sometimes, at Revenge Pulse, we don't recognize a story by its drama. We recognize it by the stillness that follows something irreversible. This one arrived that way. Quiet. Settled. As if the ending had already happened, and only the truth was left to surface. Her name is Alyssa Chen. She's a software engineer. What happened to her matters because it wasn't loud when it broke her family apart. It was methodical, and it lasted years. This is where she takes over. I was standing across the street when the police walked my parents out of the house. Red and blue lights bounced off the windows like they were searching for something. My mother's shoulders were shaking. My father kept insisting there had been a mistake. He said it calmly, like calm had ever fixed anything for us. "That's my daughter's house," he kept repeating. "She doesn't live here," the officer replied, already guiding him forward. I didn't step closer. I didn't wave. I didn't correct anyone. The strange part was how clear my head felt. I'd driven there because a neighbor had texted me. "You might want to come." No details. Just that. By the time I arrived, the damage was already done. A shattered side window. A door frame split down the middle. Someone's living room torn apart by people who thought they still had a right to enter. My mother's voice cut through the night. We were just trying to talk to her. I stayed quiet. Talking had never looked like this before. We don't often see moments like this begin in silence. And yet, she didn't rush toward them. She didn't rush toward anyone. I remember thinking how small my father looked without a house behind him. An officer approached me after they were gone. "Are you Alyssa Chen?" I nodded. "This property doesn't belong to you anymore." "Correct?" "That's right." He paused, then glanced back at the broken door. "They believed it did." I told him I understood. I didn't tell him that believing things had always been my parents' strength. They believed my brother would succeed next time. They believed I would cover the gap. They believed love meant access. When I got back into my car, my phone buzzed. A voicemail notification. From my mother. I deleted it without listening. Later, people would ask how it came to this. They assumed it started with anger. It didn't. It started with a number I saved for years. And a Sunday dinner where everyone else decided what that number was for. I used to measure my life in weeks. Not birthdays. Not promotions. Weeks. Every Friday morning, I'd open the same spreadsheet before work. Same file, same columns, rent, groceries, transit, freelance income, and at the bottom, the number that mattered, 185,000. That was the target. Not because it sounded impressive, because it felt possible. Because it was the amount that meant I wouldn't have to ask anyone for help. I lived in a studio in Aurora that barely fit a bed and a desk. The desk wobbled if I leaned on it too hard. The heat clicked on and off whenever it felt like it. I kept my coats on hooks behind the door because there wasn't room for a closet. Most nights, dinner was whatever didn't require thinking. Eggs, rice, something frozen. I worked all day, then logged into freelance projects after 8. Interface cleanups, bug fixes, short contracts nobody else wanted. When friends asked why I didn't just move somewhere nicer, I shrugged. I'm close to something. I'd tell them. I didn't explain what. Sunday dinners at my parents' place were the one routine I never skipped. Lakewood wasn't far, and my mom liked consistency. She liked knowing where everyone was. She'd open the door already talking. "You're late. Come in. It's getting cold." My dad usually stayed in his chair, glasses sliding down his nose, nodding when I walked past. "You look tired," he'd say, not unkindly. My brother Jason arrived last. He always did. Sometimes with a new idea. Sometimes with an excuse. His wife Megan followed, juggling bags and the kids' shoes, apologizing for everything even when no one asked her to. At the table, my mom served extra portions onto Jason's plate. "He needs the energy," she'd say, smiling. Jason talked about whatever he was working on that month. Logistics, consulting, something scalable. He spoke fast, confident, like momentum was the same thing as progress. I mostly listened. I didn't bring up my spreadsheet, or the pre-approval email sitting unread in my inbox. I told myself there would be a better moment. Halfway through dinner, my mom glanced at me. "You've been very quiet lately." "I've just been busy." She nodded, satisfied. "Well, as long as you're being smart." We were all being careful, in our own ways. We noticed that restraint early on. Not silence, exactly. More like someone holding a door shut with their shoulder, hoping it won't push back yet. That night, as I drove home, I thought about the house I'd toured that morning. 3 bedrooms, morning light in the kitchen. Nothing fancy, just solid. I told myself I'd share the news next week. I didn't know the number wasn't just mine anymore. The next Sunday, I brought my phone with me to dinner. I don't know why. I told myself it was nothing. Habit, maybe. But I had photos saved, the kitchen, the backyard, the inspection notes I hadn't shown anyone yet. I kept the phone face down on my thigh the whole drive to Lakewood, feeling that quiet buzz under my skin. When I walked in, something was already off. My mom didn't ask about traffic. She didn't comment on the weather. She hugged me a little too tight, then steered me straight toward the dining room. "Let's all sit while the food's hot." Jason was already there. Laptop open, not eating. Megan was next to him, smoothing a wrinkle out of her sleeve. The kids were at the far end of the table, swinging their legs, whispering to each other. My dad cleared his throat. "All right, Jason has something he wants to share." Jason stood up like he was at work. He turned the laptop toward us, clicked once, then started talking. "Okay, so this is a logistics optimization platform for regional distributors. Real need, real gap in the market. Charts appeared, lines moving up, boxes labeled with words I recognized but didn't quite believe." Megan jumped in softly. "We've been working on this for months. It's different this time." Jason nodded, encouraged. "All we need is bridge capital to get through development and initial marketing. Then we scale." I picked up my fork, put it back down. My mom leaned forward, and we've all talked about how this could be a real opportunity for the family. That word, family, it landed heavy. Jason finally looked at me. "Alyssa, you've always been good with money." I didn't respond right away. I watched my dad's hands instead. He was twisting his napkin into a tight little rope. Jason continued, "We're looking for 185,000, just to start." The number didn't echo. It settled. My mom smiled, like she was easing into a sensitive subject. "We know you've been saving. You're disciplined. You don't have kids. This wouldn't hurt you the way it would hurt us." Something cold moved through my chest. I felt everyone waiting, not staring, waiting. Like the decision had already been made and they were just checking that I'd keep up. We hear moments like this slow down, not because of drama, but because everyone senses the line that's about to be crossed. I set my fork down carefully. "I'm not investing my house money." Jason's face tightened. "It's not an investment. It's support." Megan's voice followed, gentle. "This affects the kids too." I pushed my chair back just enough to breathe. "That money is already spoken for." My mom's smile thinned. "We didn't realize you'd decided everything on your own." I looked around the table, at the charts, the folded napkin, the untouched plates. I thought about the photos on my phone. I didn't take it out. Not yet. The room didn't explode the way people imagine these things do. It tightened. Jason closed the laptop, slower than necessary. "So you're just saying no." "I'm saying that money is for my house." Megan shifted in her chair. One hand moved to Jason's arm. "We thought you'd understand. We're not asking for fun money." My mom leaned back, arms crossing, then uncrossing. "You've always been independent. That's good. But independence doesn't mean cutting yourself off from family." My dad finally looked up. His voice came out flat. "You know how much pressure your brother's under?" I nodded. "I do. And I've worked under pressure too. That's how I saved it." Jason let out a short laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "So that's it. You're choosing a house over us." "That's not what I said. But that's what you're doing. The kids had gone quiet. Megan reached for a napkin, folded it once, twice, then stopped. They'll remember who showed up for them. That one landed harder than the rest. I felt my jaw lock. Don't do that. My mom's voice sharpened. She's just being honest. Silence pressed in again. My dad pushed his chair back a few inches. If you walk away from your brother right now, he said, steady and final, don't expect to walk back into this family later. The words sat there. No anger. No raised voices. Just a decision delivered like a fact. We recognize moments when choices stop being hypothetical. This was one of those. I stood up. My legs felt oddly light. I'm not giving him the money. My mom's face drained of color. Then you should leave. I grabbed my coat. The phone in my pocket felt heavier than before. I will. Jason didn't look at me. Megan stared at the table. My dad watched like he was waiting for me to change my mind at the door. I didn't. I drove home with the radio off. When I got inside my studio, I sat on the floor for a long minute, back against the bed. The next morning, I changed my number. I didn't tell anyone where I was going next. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty about it. The year after I left felt longer than the 5 before it. I didn't tell anyone from my family when I made the offer on the house. I didn't announce it. I just signed the papers, wired the money, and waited. When the keys landed in my hand, I stood in the empty living room and listened to how quiet it was. No voices carrying from another room. No tension humming under the floorboards. The first night, I sat on the kitchen floor and ate takeout straight from the container. It tasted better than it should have. Work picked up. Without the constant pull of Sunday dinners, my weekends opened up. I slept more. I stopped flinching when my phone buzzed. Friends noticed the change. You seem lighter, one of them said over coffee. Less noise. I answered. That felt closer to the truth. A few months in, I met Lucas through a project handoff at work. He didn't push, didn't pry. When I mentioned my family in vague terms, he nodded like he understood what not to ask. That's fair, he said. Everyone has their lines. We see how rare that feels in the moment. Not being challenged, not being tested, just accepted where you stand. Some nights, I still reached for my phone without thinking. Then I remembered there was no one on the other end waiting for updates or explanations. I filled the spare bedroom with a desk and a plant that needed more light than I gave it. I learned how to adjust. Peace wasn't dramatic. It didn't feel like winning. It felt like not bracing myself anymore. I told myself that if my family ever came back, it would be because they missed me. I let myself believe that for a while. The email showed up on a Tuesday morning, tucked between work updates and a calendar reminder I'd forgotten to delete. Please come home. This is serious. No greeting, no explanation. Just that. I stared at it longer than I meant to. 5 years without a word, and this was how they broke the silence. I didn't reply right away. I made coffee, let it cool. Read it again. By Friday night, I wrote back. One line. I can come by on Sunday. Driving to Lakewood felt like shrinking the world back down. The neighborhood looked the same, but smaller. The lawns tighter. The houses closer together. 2 cars I didn't recognize were in the driveway. One of them expensive enough to make my stomach twist. My mom opened the door before I knocked. Thank you for coming, she said, already pulling me into a hug. Inside. Everyone was waiting. Jason sat forward on the couch, elbows on his knees, Megan beside him, hands folded too neatly in her lap. My dad stayed standing, arms crossed. This isn't easy, my mom began. I stayed near the door. You said it was serious. Jason exhaled. The business collapsed 3 months ago. Megan's voice followed, low and tight. We didn't want to scare you. The number came next, delivered like a weight. 310,000. I blinked once. That's not a small problem. My dad stepped in. It's a mix of bridge loans and personal guarantees. If this goes public, it doesn't just hurt Jason, and the creditors aren't patient. Megan added. They've started sending notices. Formal ones. They watched me carefully. No one rushed, like they'd practiced. My mom reached for my hand. We think selling your house could solve this. You'd still land on your feet. I pulled my hand back. You want me to sell my home? You're young, she continued. You can rebuild. Jason doesn't have that luxury. I glanced at the keys on the counter, the sleek ones, the ones that didn't belong to someone desperate. Have you sold anything? I asked. The car? The equipment? Anything. Jason's jaw tightened. We need those to recover. That word again. Recover. As if this were a shared illness. We notice how carefully they avoid saying what it would cost her. Not in numbers. In ground lost. My dad's voice softened. You've always been the strong one. We thought you'd understand. Something in me went very still. I understand. I said. I just don't agree. My mom's eyes filled. If something happens to your brother, I shook my head. Stop. Silence settled. No one chased me when I reached for the door. Outside, the air felt sharper, cleaner. I didn't cry on the drive home. I just knew, finally, that whatever they wanted from me next wouldn't be small. I noticed the car first. It was parked across the street when I pulled into my driveway, engine off, windows down just enough to feel deliberate. I sat there longer than I needed to, keys still in my hand, listening to the tick of the engine cooling. By the time I reached my front door, it was gone. 2 days later, my mom showed up. No call, no warning. I opened the door and she was standing there with my dad. Both of them dressed like they were running errands. My dad's eyes moved past me, already scanning the hallway. How did you get my address? My mom smiled, tight and careful. We needed to talk. That doesn't answer my question. Jason's name slipped out next. He hired someone, just to locate you. Something in my chest dropped. You hired a private investigator. My dad stepped inside without waiting for permission. He looked around like he was estimating square footage. This is a nice place. Don't walk in my house like that. My mom followed, touching the edge of the counter, the back of a chair. If you sold this, she said softly, you could cover Jason's debt and still have enough left for an apartment. I stayed near the door. You need to leave. My dad turned, frustration breaking through. You don't need all this space. It's just you. I need you out. He sighed, like I was being unreasonable. We're not leaving until we figure this out. We recognize the moment when a conversation stops being a conversation. This was that moment. I pulled out my phone. I'm calling the police. My mom's face changed then. Real fear. Don't do that. Then go. They hesitated. My dad looked around one last time, like he was memorizing it. You're making this harder than it needs to be. They left without apologizing. I locked the door and stood there, hand on the deadbolt, waiting for my heart to slow down. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and made a list, not of feelings, of steps, who to call, what to move, how fast I could act. By morning, I'd contacted an agent, off market. I told her, I need this done quietly. After I hung up, I stared at the walls, the ones I'd painted myself, the corners I'd imagined growing into. I realized then they weren't asking me to help. They were trying to take. The sale happened faster than I expected. The agent called 3 days after I listed it. There's an investor interested, she said. They're offering 8% below market. Clean close. No questions. I looked around the living room while she talked, the plant by the window, the scuff on the baseboard I'd never fixed. That works. I told her. Signing the paperwork felt heavier than buying the house ever had. I packed in stages. Not everything. Just what mattered. Clothes. My laptop. The framed photo from a hiking trip Lucas and I took the year before. Lucas drove out to help. He didn't rush me. When I stopped in the doorway, he waited. You ready? Yeah, I said. It came out quieter than I meant. We loaded the last box into his car as the sun dropped behind the houses across the street. I took one more look at the front door, then turned away before I could change my mind. We understand this kind of choice when it's made without witnesses. Not dramatic, just necessary. At Lucas's place in Boulder, things felt temporary in a way that didn't scare me. A toothbrush on the counter. My shoes lined up by the door. He handed me a mug the first morning and didn't ask how long I planned to stay. "Take your time," he said. The money moved into accounts my family didn't know about. I changed a few settings, added extra layers, quiet steps. One evening, my phone buzzed with a missed call from a number I didn't recognize. Denver area code. I didn't return it. Instead, I sat on the couch and watched the light fade through the window, knowing I'd done the only thing left that still belonged entirely to me. The call came on a quiet morning while I was making coffee. A number from Denver. I answered this time. "This is Officer Miller," the voice said. "I'm calling regarding an incident involving your parents." He explained it carefully. There had been a break-in, property damage. The house they entered wasn't mine. It hadn't been for weeks. They believed it was. The damage totaled just under $80,000. Charges were reduced after a plea. Restitution would be required. I sat down on the edge of the couch and listened without interrupting. "They forced entry with a crowbar," he added. "They said they were retrieving documents." I thanked him and ended the call. Lucas came in from the other room, saw my face, and waited. They went back. I told him. To the old house. He nodded once. "Are you okay?" "I am," I said, surprised by how true it felt. Later, I heard the rest through someone else. My parents sold their place to cover the costs. What was left went to Jason, the creditors. It turned out we're preparing a civil case. No threats. No danger. Just consequences they didn't want to face. A voicemail from my mom followed a few days later. Her voice sounded smaller than I remembered. "We made mistakes," she said. "We just want to talk." I deleted it. Life didn't change all at once after that. It settled. Lucas and I looked at houses together. Smaller ones. Ones that didn't feel like leverage. I started thinking in years again instead of weeks. I don't feel angry when I think about them. I feel clear. What I learned wasn't about money or houses. It was about how easily love can turn into access if you don't protect it. Alyssa Chen didn't lose her family that night. She stopped being used as their solution. And in that space, something steadier took root. If this story stays with you, you'll know why. We listened as she finished, and nothing else needed to be added.